This is a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Top 5 at 5 on BFM 89.9. Good evening. It is 5:06 and you're with Lee Chui Lin and Cam Razlan as we count down to the biggest story of the day.
Number 3.
A tale as old as time, overdevelopment and unsustainable development in KL City.
Yes, this is what the Kuala Lumpur Residents Association plus Sustainable Development, or KLRA+SD group believes. They recently voiced concerns about a proposed high-rise development in Taman Desa, which has been approved by the Kuala Lumpur City Hall, or DBKL. The residents are worried about the potential negative impacts of this development, particularly on the quality of life in the neighbourhood.
So some things here are specific to Taman Desa, but others I think are more generally applicable to development in the city, right? Because key concerns raised by the group include the lack of transparency and consultation in the approval process, which residents believe bypassed necessary legal procedures and ignored their objections. They also argue that the development is not in line with the existing density and character of Taman Desa, which is itself a low-density residential area, and they believe that the project could exacerbate traffic congestion, strain local infrastructure, and harm the environment.
KLRA+SD also emphasises that such developments undermine the government's broader goals of sustainable urban planning. They're calling for DBKL to halt the project, reassess the approval process, and engage with the community to ensure that any future developments are in line with the needs and wishes of the residents.
So we reached out to Tan Booi Charn, the chairperson of KLRA+SD, and asked her basically about the specific concerns that the group had regarding this proposed development.
We are very concerned that the proposed development will exacerbate the already overloaded carrying capacity of Taman Desa, where within 100 metres of the project there are already 5,077 units of high-rise, high-density apartments. The area have also seen lands meant for public infrastructure like community hall and supposedly land for library being converted for high-rise development. The MP for Seputeh, YB Teresa Kau, also raised the issue of schools in the area reaching its capacity. Currently, the area is already congested with high-density development and the residents there suffering from bad traffic jams every day and loss of greenery. If this high-density development is allowed, it will make the living condition further deteriorated and everyone living there will be affected. I would like to highlight that right now, besides Taman Desa, most areas in KL are already suffering from the effects of overdevelopment. We are facing massive traffic jam every day, massive loss of greenery, frequent and extensive flash floods after heavy rain, landslides and change of temperature in the city. These are the evidence of overdevelopment.
Booi Charn also noted that the group and residents had not received much feedback from DBKL regarding their concerns.
Since the Rule 7 engagement session, we have not heard from the City Hall, except reading from the media reports of the launch of the proposed development. We think DBKL should begin to engage with the residents sincerely and not merely to tick the boxes of having done the engagement. It should be a two-way engagement where the residents address the concern, then DBKL provide the explanation and response on the spot, not just saying noted, okay or keep silent. It should be a thorough engagement, like a few rounds of discussions, a few meetings, addressing and explaining people's concern before coming out with a final decision. The actual scenario we are experiencing now is that in Taman Desa case, the time from the Kaedah 7 engagement session to the date the invitation was sent out to the launch of the proposed development was only 10 working days apart. This is a big question mark to us.
So KLRA+SD have reiterated also that they're not against development, especially affordable housing. Booi Charn stressed that they are just calling for balanced and sustainable development in the city.
With regards to the PM statement on the newspaper during the launch of the Residency Surya Madani development in Taman Desa, dated 29th August, carrying the headline, "What about the tens of thousands without homes?" PM says Putrajaya ignoring the super rich who whine about affordable housing. KLRA+SD would like to comment on the above statement. The residents in Taman Desa that objected for the development are not all elites. There are many PPRs and Perumahan Awam in Taman Desa who are objecting to the development too. Think about it. Why did they object to it? Simply because they are living there. They are already suffering from loss of greenery and traffic jams every day. Whenever overdevelopment is pushing the city to the tipping point, beyond the tipping point, all of us, be it B40, M40 and T20, will suffer. Residents are not elites, and we all do care for the poor.
That was Tan Booi Charn, the chairperson of the Kuala Lumpur Residents Association plus Sustainable Development Group, talking about essentially the group's pushback to a high-rise development in Taman Desa.
Yeah. Oh, Lynn, I sympathize with the Taman Desa residents so much because I am suffering right now from a development right outside my window.
Yeah.
And it'll take years. And it's made my life absolute hell.
So I think that this is a really interesting one, partly because I also live so I'm around Taman Desa a lot because that's where my partner lives. But I also come from, I guess, my house is in a mature neighborhood that has also recently seen a high-rise mixed-use commercial building built. And I see both the good and the bad. I mean, when the residents are talking about things like traffic, like strain on infrastructure, concerns around these things, I don't live in KL. It's PJ and it's already bad enough, so I can't imagine how it would be further in the city. I also do see, however, the change in for lack of a better word, vibe that the neighborhood has had. And in some cases, it's also a rejuvenation. So I feel like there is a push and pull, which is why the residents are emphasizing that they're not against development, right? It's about what kind of development. Because I do think a lot of older neighborhoods, despite how residents might feel, benefit in some ways from having these newer spaces come up.
I think, Lynn, you might be looking at it incorrectly in that you're imagining that the residents and the community and the environment are somehow factors in the decision making. I think that I'm a good Malaysian. I have learnt the developer is king.
Yes.
So it's always the priority to give the developer whatever they want. And what happens to residents and the community and the environment is by the by.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think I'm only speaking about it as somebody who has observed it coming up, right? And had my own feelings about it in the process of doing so. But you're right that there is that sense of helplessness. Although maybe that's why that's why the Residents Association is
fighting hard.
Yes,
so they should.
As they are. Let us know if you have thoughts on the story, and especially if you have also seen your neighborhood change with these sorts of high rises. That number to call is 7733 2900. Send us a voice note or WhatsApp 018-789-8899 and tweet us at BFM Radio. Just back now to look at some of the messages that we've been getting in relation to the stories we covered today. Let's start with the one that's gotten the most response, which has to do with development and sustainable development in our city, particularly in relation to Taman Desa. So let's see. Miss Low says, I'm in agreement with Miss Tan Booi Charn 100%. I live in the next Taman over from Taman Desa. I have friends living in Taman Desa who are definitely not elites. We feel so offended when PMX issued that statement. We're just asking for sustainable development that isn't, we are just asking for sustainable development. We're not against affordable housing. This monster development not only affects Taman Desa, but also the next Taman, so Kuchai Lama, OUG, Sri Petaling. The roads are interlinked towards the Salak Highway interchange from KL Seremban because the exiting roads are currently all choked up.
Yeah, it just keep adding on top of. There's no thought about overall planning, but that's Kuala Lumpur for you.
It is Kuala Lumpur, and so it's become a little bit of a Frankenstein situation, I think, with things just continuously getting added. And I hear you. I think, Ms. Low, I understand it can be very galling to be called an elite.
Let's look at from Sheikh Fadzil. So same thing happening here in Shah Alam Section 13. The LRT3, Bandar Utama Klang, has a 2-kilometer tunnel from Stadium Shah Alam to Pejabat Post Section 14. This stretch from Section 13 to Section 10 is an affluent area where everybody owns cars. The tunnel costs about 80% of the cost. Useless, says Sheikh Fazil. Should cover the industrial Shah Alam area, section 15 and above, high densities. Little that we know, grand systems of things coming with demolition of Shah Alam Stadium. Is that? Oh my goodness. And plan to build hotels and service residents by the developer in the area surrounding. Like Cam said, local authority just give whatever the developer wants. We protest through the community association and only succeed in making them cancel one LRT station at this area.
So, again, as we alluded to when we first spoke about it, this is sadly a very Klang Valley story. I think it's a Malaysian story in many ways. It's just that here in the Klang Valley, development happens at such a pace that we notice and see it a lot. But I'm not surprised to hear reports coming in from various locales that this is a problem that people are facing.
Yeah. I know people who have been chased out of their homes basically by development on 4 occasions. They moved from house to house to house because development came.
Yeah,
and forced them away.
It forces them away. It also, in the meantime, makes life while the development is coming up difficult, which is something that you were talking about. But I don't think the answer is to necessarily say no more development either.
But to prioritize the civilians, I feel like we're all just living on edge in Kuala Lumpur. The hammer could fall at any moment. And you know full well you've got no power.
Yeah, which is something that is coming through loud and clear in the messages. We also have Salahuddin who says, this density and traffic concern raised by KLRA is an issue of car-centric development, not a housing development issue. We need to address the problem of a rising car population that's not sustainable for our communities.
Which, of course, connects with our MRT Circle Line. I've been thinking, though, that the Circle Line would obviously involve a lot of construction. So there it goes again.
Yes, causing traffic while it goes up. Yeah. It's kind of this the snake eating its own tail. We also have a voice note from Roberto, which is related. It's about the MRT Circle Line.
I don't think that the Circle Line will solve the problem of traffic congestion in the Klang Valley, to be very frank, period. I have seen many people just to transit or to travel a very short distance to still using their cars. Right now I'm in the traffic jam, and wherever any car that I see around me is transporting only one person. Convenience, call it whatever you want, but public transportation is not as efficient as is needed to be, especially the famous last mile connectivity. It's that is what, if we sorted out that part, I believe that then more people will like to take public transportation. But right now, there's no way. You can build a lot of lines or MRTs or subway stations as you want. If we do not connect people to those stations, we will still be using cars as we are doing right now.
Roberto, I hear you. I think also it's hard for us to imagine, because for the longest time, that connectivity problem has in fact been a problem and we've not yet seen it addressed. So because of that, it's hard to picture the mindset shift. In theory, it ought to be the case that when you have a circle line, when you have, let's say, shuttles, right, getting people to and from, or being able to transport people to said circle line, things should improve, in theory.
Somebody on Twitter, I wish I could remember who, did a wonderful Twitter thread looking at densities around these new MRT stations and discovered that many of the stations, like, nobody lived within a 15-minute walk of several stations.
It's so as somebody who does live roughly within that space, I think another part of it is walkability of it. You might live...
It's hot.
It's uncovered. You're often walking with no sidewalk whatsoever. So, walkability, when we say, oh, you live 15 minutes away, 20 minutes walk, it's not really that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I have an MRT station, which I guess not that far, but I have to basically climb a mountain to get there.
You have been listening to a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station. For more stories of the same kind, download the BFM app.